Hi there, welcome to Brine, a cooking channel, one of many on YouTube. My name is Steve Gerhardt, and today I've got a really fun, easy pickling recipe for you guys. Today we're going to pickle red onions. It's so simple. If you can boil water and cut onions without slicing your finger off, then you can certainly do this recipe. So let's go ahead and get into it. So this recipe is really, like I said, very easy to make. Even the ingredients for the recipe are really easy to attain. There's nothing exotic in here. You can find it in just about any grocery store. You can find it in Walmart. Basically, just go to where you get your food and you'll most likely find all of these ingredients. So the goal that we're trying to do here is we're going to fill up one of these pickling jars, right? I use ball. You'll see that in my video. So I'm going for this size. And so you want enough red onions to fill this up. On this particular recipe that I did for this video, I decided to use 3 small red onions. And so that's the first thing on your list that you're going to want is enough onions to fill up that jar. And you're going to slice them very, very as thin as humanly possible. If you happen to have a mandolin on you, please use that. I used a Santoku knife given to me by an old friend, and I love that knife, and it certainly did the trick, but I think a mandolin would be easier for this particular task. So if you got one, use it. So that's the first ingredient. The next ingredient is really easy. It's water. Okay, you're gonna need 2 cups of water, and you're gonna boil that eventually. You're also gonna, I'm reading off my list here. You're also gonna want a cup of apple cider vinegar. Whatever brand you use, whatever tastes good to you that you like to use for your own pickling, use it. You do you. And if you want, and I do in this recipe, want your pickled onions to be a little bit on the sweeter side, I put in 4 teaspoons of sugar. This is optional. What is not optional is the 2.5 teaspoons of sea salt. It's the sea salt and the vinegar and the water that makes your brine that pickles the thing. The sugar just kind of candies it up a little bit, if you will. So if you like your pickling more on the tart side or the vinegary side, or you want it more of that onion flavor, right, then omit the sugar. But if you want it a little bit sweet, like is often served, then add the sugar into it. And the last ingredient that you want in here, or maybe not, is peppercorn, whole peppercorns. I put in 15 whole peppercorns for this particular recipe. Now, the peppercorns add a zing to it, and peppercorns in pickling have a very, 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 very low grade amount of heat to it. It's almost not there, but for those of us who do a lot of pickling and like those kinds of tastes, it's a fun thing to have. As you notice in most pickling and brines, peppercorn is often added into the mix. But for this recipe, if you don't want that taste, that's fine. You do you, and omit it. What's important is that you have the cider vinegar, the water, and the sea salt. That's your basic brine. The rest of it just adds flavor. So like I said, you're going to cut thinly cut rather, the red onions, and you're going to want enough, again, to repeat, enough to fill this jar. You'll see in this video again that I used 3 small onions. You do you. If you happen to find a couple big red onions that does the trick, do that. So when you put it in, when you put everything together, and that'll be the second half of the video where I show you step by step what to do. When you do this, what you're doing to pickling in general is that you're breaking down the food item, right? You're making it a little bit softer, or you're adding flavor to it. You're making the food itself last a little bit longer, you know, because that's kind of was the whole point of pickling and things like that, is to make your food, stretch out your food supply longer. And so obviously with an onion, which is a very structured cell in terms of cells and the plant itself, it's a tough plant. It's very structured. You know, I mean, in biology, you know, like early biology classes, we actually look at onions under the microscope, and that gives us the first idea of what a cell wall looks like. So what we're trying to do with brining in general is to break down those walls, to make it softer, to release flavor and interesting taste. So that's what we're trying to do here. So what's interesting about this particular recipe that I don't normally see in some of the other pickling recipes that I do is how quickly this affects an onion. So this recipe is originally what's called a quick recipe, which is that this is originally made to have something ready in a couple hours. So you would do this process, you would put a cloth over the bowl and let it sit for an hour, and then the pickling would be done enough for you to be able to serve the food as pickled onions. It doesn't quite have the taste of a pickled onion that's been sitting in a jar for about 4 days or so, which is what I'm going to do here. But again, the brine does the job of breaking things down. The onions become a little bit softer. There's a little bit different flavors, more flavor to it, and that's usually what you want. And again, this is a quick recipe. But because I want a lot of it, because I like pickled onions, and I want to be able to have it for a longer period of time, I'm going to put them into the jar, of course, the jar. Now, again, what's interesting is that the brine breaks the onions down, right? So when I first put it into the jar, the liquid was fairly clear for a brine, right? It was a little bit muddy just because of, you know, the apple cider vinegar and a couple other things that were in there, the peppercorns, but it was basically clear. So this is what it looks like just an hour or so after having put it into a jar. This is just an hour. This is what it looks like now, right? Look at that. That thing is breaking down, is it not? You can see it's still slightly, you know, it's got a little bit of transparency to it, but you can see that it's starting to break down, right? Look at that. See that little peppercorn in there? So these onions are breaking down, and in about 4 days, I'm hoping to see something radically different than this. And this was just after 1 hour. So that's what we're aiming for, right? Fill this jar up. In about 4 days, we'll see what this tastes like, and we'll go into the future here in a moment, 4 days into the future, and see how well they come out. And then after that, and I'm pretty sure they're going to taste good because it already looks yummy, doesn't it? Doesn't it look yummy? And then after that, of course, I'll go step by step on how to actually do it. Again, very easy recipe. All right, here we go, 4 days into the future. It has been 4 days, and it's been sitting in the jar, marinating in the brine, and the brine is doing its work. It's certainly changed the physical onion itself. I'm going to show you a picture of what it looked like just as we were putting it into the brine and the onions together, and right before we put it into the fridge. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the breakdown of that, and then we're going to taste the red onion and see what we come up with. And then after that, I'm going to, of course, give you the video of me making it, breaking it down, how to do it, and all that good stuff so that you can do it. And again, as I was saying before, this is a very easy recipe. It's very easy to get the ingredients. This is literally, if you can boil water, you can do this recipe, honestly. Okay, so let's do a comparison real quick, and and then we'll get to the tasting. Okay, as I said before, this is like literally right after I made the brine, and the onions were already cut, thinly sliced. If you have a mandolin, please use that. It's a lot easier. But this is what it looks like right after I put everything together, and I put the lid on really tight, and right before I put it in the fridge for about 4 days. As you can tell, it's kind of still kind of clear, kind of hazy liquid inside there. That's the brine, and that haziness is the brine actually already breaking the onion down. It's breaking down cell walls and things like that. So it makes the onion, reduces the structure of the onion to something a little bit more pliable, a little bit more softer. The longer you let it go before you open it up, the more softer it's going to get, the more, flavor from the brine it's going to take in addition to its own onionness, if you will. So, this is kind of what it looks like, and this is kind of the whole point of brining things. It's going to change it so that it lasts a little bit longer, the food lasts longer, and if this works out, then it's going to last about 3 weeks inside the jar in a refrigerator. And this is the beginning of the process. Now, the brine, the whole purpose of the brine of the vinegar and things like that is, like I said, to help break it down and then preserve it for a limited time, a longer time than it normally would last. So when we take a look, right before I do the tasting, we're going to show you what it looks like just after 4 days, and it's going to look radically different. The brine actually starts to break, not only breaks down the cell walls, but it actually takes out, leaches out the actual color on the outside of the skin, the red of the onion skin, and the liquid is going to be really kind of reddish, and the onions themselves are going to go from white to a more of a pinkish hue, I think, or at least that's what it should look like. So we'll see in a moment the product of basically what this is supposed to do, what a brine is supposed to do. But yeah, this was just 1 hour after putting it all together, and after 4 days you're going to see something really, really different. So let's go ahead and see the change. So I don't know if you can hear it or not, but if you do, the gurgling noise is the washer and dryer right behind me. That's all that is. Okay, let's get back to the pickled red onions. So you saw what the onions in the picture look like, and that's all about the brine, what the brine's going to do to it and change it. And this is what it's going to change it into. It looks a lot different, doesn't it? I'll take another picture and have it up at the end as I do the recipe kind of stuff. But so as you can see, the brine did what it was supposed to do. It breaks down the onion so that we make a more softer onion, pickled onion that you're used to. There should be a lot of flavor here. We should have a little bit of tanginess, and we should have some sweetness involved here. So this is about 4 days. You can of course go longer if you want before you open it. It's really up to you. But the recommended time is about 4 or 5 days before opening it if you want something more substantial than a quick pickling recipe, which is still a good recipe, but this is what we're aiming for. So yeah, we're going to open it up and we're going to have a taste. Ironically, I'm using my Hex can opener thing. It's Hex, if you're not familiar with that brand. They actually make sauerkraut, flavored sauerkraut and stuff. So I'm going to put the video on pause for a moment while I get this open, because it's a little bit harder than I thought it was going to be. So actually I had to get some leverage, took it to the kitchen and opened it. But having a tight seal is important, whether you're doing pickling, jamming, or anything like that. That's actually a good thing to have, a good problem to have. It means that there's no air getting in there when you don't want it to contaminate and screw up the process. So we're just going to go ahead and take the ring off. And then we're going to take the seal off. And this can be a little tricky sometimes too. It's usually okay to have like a utensil here. Just do the little pop. There we go. You heard that, I think. Alright. So we got that going on. Oh, the smell is wonderful. Oh, this smells good. This smells right. Vinegary, oniony. It smells like it's gonna taste good. Okay, fork in hand. We got a plate. I got my ratty clothes on in case I, get this juice or whatever on me. Let's see if I can get a good. Let's see. And see how it's broken down like that? Isn't that kind of awesome? It's just like it's not as stiff. All right, so let's get a little bit here so it doesn't get all over the place. Let's give it a try. Let's give it a go, see what happens. Nice. This is going to be on the tangier side. It looks like. Tastes like. Still got that crunch. So I'm thinking if you wanted to get like really broken down, keep it in longer, perhaps. If you want, it's got a nice tang to it. It's not so vinegary or tart or anything like that, and that's what the sugar does, is kind of tone those flavors down a little bit, so it's not, you're not like, oh, you know, get like that sour face like you're sucking on a lemon or anything. So this is really nice. So this is going to be something that's going to be good on like burgers, or, you know, as a side for your charcuterie and things like that. So this is definitely one of those things where you do you, right? Where if you want it kind of still like that crunchy, then leave it in for about 4 days. If you want to really break it down, maybe put it in for a week to 10 days. I know that sometimes when I do pickles and onions, they say 4 or 5 days, and I just leave it in there for like 9 to 10, and that actually usually does the trick. So I'm thinking that for this, if you want a little bit sweeter or more broken down, a little bit more tangy, then just leave it in for a while before you open it up. But the cool thing is that even so, when I put this back into the fridge, which is going to last, by the way, about 3 weeks, so make sure you use this up in 3 weeks before it starts, you know, really kind of being off. But in that time, you know, the brine is still working. It's still doing things. It's still, you know, breaking things down, just at a slower rate. It's not as concentrated anymore. So, yeah, I'm going to chalk this one up to a success. So, again, if you want something that's going to be on the sweeter side, put in more sugar. If you want it sweet and tangy, or not sweet but tangy, use that sugar to offset the sharpness of the vinegar of the brine. And yeah, God, this is really good. And so easy, really easy. You can do this. All right, so this experiment is a success, I think. I'm gonna have another one. Oh, and the other thing that's also probably offsetting the sweetness actually itself is probably the peppercorns. Remember, I put in 15 peppercorns in there, so that's probably what's giving that's kind of keeping it from being really sweet and almost jammy kind of. So I'm thinking that if you make this recipe and you like things a little bit sweeter, then omit the peppercorns, okay, and maybe add another teaspoon of sugar to it. But yeah, this is good stuff. This is really good stuff. All right, you try it. Let me know what you think. If you got any ideas for it, any improvements on it. Again, this is a very basic recipe, so you can actually do other things to it if you like. Or if you already have and you would like to share those things, please do so down below. I would love to see some ideas and stuff. And I am going to make a burger, and I'm going to put this on my burger. So, all right, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Oh, I'm so happy this turned out so good.